Greetings from Washington, which was admitted to the Union on November 11, 1889. With 6.4 million residents, this state ranks 14th in the nation for total population.
The people that it rains keeps the folks who would rush in here and overpopulate, keeps them at bay.
Outside perceptions about the rain aren't really accurate. In Seattle, an average year brings 37 inches of rain, a full foot less than New York City. What gives Seattle its rainy reputation is more than 200 cloudy days per year. Yet even with all the gray skies, Seattleites buy more sunglasses per capita than any other city in the nation.
If you see a person with dark sunglasses and no umbrella and it's pouring rain, that's a Seattleite.
The people who live in this town are very innovative and they're cool. Cool people move to Seattle.
One of the coolest things in Seattle is the hot coffee.
Washington State's greatest contribution to American history has to be the coffee.
We all need something to perk us up a little bit during the winter time, and we make good coffee here.
The Space Needle and monorail are the familiar Seattle landmarks, but its houseboats are legendary. You'll find more here than in any other North American city. Some 500 dot the 4 natural bodies of water inside Seattle's boundaries: Lake Union, Salmon Bay, Portage Bay, and Union Bay. And if you don't like boats, take a seaplane. Since 1946, Washington's Kenmore Air has been the largest operator of seaplanes in the United States.
You know, when you come into an approach to land, you go right by the Space Needle, and the scenery around the city, I mean, it's a beautiful place to fly around. It's one of the prettiest cities I've seen from above.
With all the water, things in Seattle can get pretty fishy, especially at the Pike Place Fish Market.
Where all these fish come from, sir? Please do not say the water.
The water.
Welcome to Seattle.
Washington State could really be 2 states in one. It is split by the north-south running Cascade Mountain Range. Mount Rainier, at 14,410 feet, is the highest peak in the state. Rainier and the other volcanic mountains of the Cascades are part of the Circum-Pacific Volcanic Belt, or Ring of Fire.
We live in a tectonically active area.
The fire that fuels Washington today stems not from volcanoes, but from high-tech industries like Microsoft. The state's early economy, however, was built on its tall timber.
Forestry was, in some ways, the first industry in Washington State. The folks who founded Seattle, for example, their first export was logs.
Timber production has cut back in recent decades. The timber supply is not as plentiful as it was. There are environmental considerations that we take into account these days, but timber is still a very important part of the Washington economy.
Unlike California, Washington never had a gold rush, but the state did have its opportunists who figured out how to make money when gold was discovered to the north in Canada.
Many cities could have been the portal to the Alaska and Canadian gold rush. It could have been San Francisco. It could have been Vancouver, British Columbia. It could have been Portland. But Seattleites know when a good thing's coming.
And Seattle began to mine the miners. A national marketing campaign to tell people that the place to outfit themselves for the Klondike was in Seattle. So there are 36 outfitters who become very wealthy, providing miners with what they need to be successful: warm clothes, blankets, tools.
In fact, they said that if you want to be successful, you have to buy $1,000 worth of goods in order to equip you for the gold rush. $1,000 back in the 1890s was a heck of a lot of money. So they left that money behind in the cash registers of Seattle, took their chances on the gold rush up north. Most of them lost their shirts, but the Seattle merchants ended up being very rich indeed.
Several decades later, a man named William Boeing got rich in the timber industry, but what he really wanted to do was fly.
Boeing had the idea. He wanted to build these flying machines, but he turned to the shipbuilders to actually create them. So the folks that made ships built the fuselage of the early planes. The folks who made the sails of boats made the early wingspans, and it landed and took off from water. So the maritime traditions of Seattle and our aviation traditions are very closely interlocked.
During World War II, the demand for aircraft soared. Existing plants began to operate at full capacity, and new ones needed to be built.
Boeing made the planes that won the war, the B-17, the B-29. Thousands of these planes were turned out, and they really proved decisive in winning World War II.
Thousands of workers came to Washington to take jobs in the aircraft industry, transforming the state. But on May 18, 1980, Washington was to undergo a much different kind of transformation. Mount St. Helens erupted, killing 57 people and reducing hundreds of square miles to wasteland.
It looked like it was just a volcanic holocaust. You could see the sun magnifying this ash cloud, and as it rose, it looked like it was just going to engulf us.
If we'd been standing right here watching this explosion, we would have had 43 seconds to live.
A giant landslide mixed with melted snow and ice flooded nearby towns with walls of mud and debris.
90% of what's missing from the volcano fell off of the mountain in a gigantic landslide. The vast majority of the slide slammed head-on into Johnston Ridge, bounced off the ridge, and was directed 14 miles down the Toutle River Valley, and it filled that valley to an average depth of 150 feet over a 14-mile distance.
Beyond the destruction, Mount St. Helens proved a scientific bonanza for volcanologists around the world.
There were two really huge ahas on May 18, 1980, and the first was that volcanoes fall apart in these gigantic landslides. The other big aha was these blasts that rip out the side of volcanoes. This blast in 1980 blew down 230 square miles of forest, so it was almost 10 times larger than any blast we had known that had come off a volcano.
Today, Mount St. Helens has become one of southern Washington's biggest tourist attractions. The recovery of local forests and wildlife is a tribute to nature's resiliency.
Nature can't be stopped, and what you see here at Mount St. Helens is nature ever determined to come back, stronger, bigger, and better.
The blast obliterated the mountain's symmetrical peak and lowered its elevation by 1,000 feet. But this still active volcano is busy rebuilding its top and is growing at a rate of 1.3 cubic yards per second.
I'm 47 now, and I'm seeing the rebirth of the mountain again. In about 44 years, I might see it all the way back to its 9,600-foot height.
Look here. I'm talking about America. Sweet America.